What's going on, you guys? It's your huggable hipster here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I've gone into the concept and the way death is approached in Elden Ring, but I haven't really gone over the concept of death and how it's approached in Lords of the Fallen. I'm really fascinated by the concept of death in Lords of the Fallen and how it's used as a tool in the game. Now, I haven't gone into too much of the lore of Lords of the Fallen on me because I don't know too much of it. I haven't gotten the chance to really sit down and do a deep dive into it. But what I have gone over, it was of Elaine, who is also Pieta. This kind of dichotomy that we see between the two characters being the exact same character, one who lives completely in Umbral, the other in life, in the Axiom. Her character got me thinking as a whole, is death worshipped in this game? Now, first off, we know death is kind of a goal within this game, right? We want to be able to see both parts of it, the life and the death. You can't have life without death in this game in order to progress. You have to go into parts of Umbral and you have to be in parts of Axiom in order to progress throughout the entire game and the main storyline. Death is utilized as a tool because you have to go into Umbral to achieve certain parts of quest lines, parts of the story, and to get certain NPC dialogues. Death in and of itself within the game acts as a multiverse concept. You have these worlds within worlds that balance each other out within the story. Elaine was the main reason why I wanted to do this video because her lore is absolutely fascinating. She was a human baby with an umbral parasite bonded to her soul. So that's kind of a beautiful way of saying death is a part of everyone. But also it's also approached as kind of a curse. Like, oh, it's a parasite that's attached to a person. Like, why is death looked at as kind of a parasite? But that's another topic for another day. I think the game is also kind of saying philosophically that the more that you dwell on death, the more it will become part of your everyday life and it will become your existence. Just the way that if you stay within death in the umbral world for too long, you will have terrible things notice you. You will have things start to attack you. Like the umbral part of your eye turns red. That means things are starting to notice you. Terrible things are going to attack you. The state of mind that we are constantly living in will be the one that we experience. And I feel like that the game does an incredible job touching on really deep philosophical things that are something that we think about on a daily basis, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. And much like in any Souls or Souls-like, there is really no good ending if you think about it. The ending that I got was the Radiant ending, and that was terrible. Like, we did not get to bond with what we were promised. There was no really kind of substantial way that the game can end. Now, I have not gotten to beat Elaine. I want to go into that and play the game all over again so I can just go and get that the Umbral ending, because wow, that boss looks absolutely incredible. And I believe it's the Putrid Mother ending of where the entire world is just engulfed in darkness, and that's not a great ending either. Throughout my time of playing Lords of the Fallen, I got this sense that death was almost worshipped in that game. Death is an incredibly complex, philosophical, psychological topic that has just so many facets to it, a multifaceted kind of train of thought that if you go down too much down the rabbit hole, you get stuck in this perpetual state of what is death? What is the concept of death exactly? Even throughout the game, it had this very, I don't want to go too much into the religious aspect of any of this, but it had such a veil of religion coating the overtop of the entire game. It was kind of unavoidable. If you play Lords of the Fallen, you were going to notice the religious just casting an overlay over top of the entire game. You have Adir and Aureus, the fight between good and evil, which you could spin so many different ways. Adir could possibly be Satan, Aureus could be the god. You could flip it so many different ways. Then when you actually see the boss battle with Adir, for as much as it was annoying, there were some really interesting points to it of where Adir sounded like he actually cared about mankind to a degree, and that Aureus was just out for power because he, was a higher being that everyone loved and trusted. So when we look at this concept of the worship of death in Lords of the Fallen, we see it as a tool. Like I've said before, we've seen it as a goal because it is a goal to get to the other side in Lords of the Fallen in order to meet the end goal, utilizing it as a tool of worship, utilizing it as a tool of a means to an end, if you will. Now, death in this game is approached very, very, very differently than a lot of Souls games and Souls-likes. oh, if you die, that means you are learning in these games. You are enhancing yourself, you're enhancing your build, you're enhancing who you are supposed to be by the end through trial and error. But death in Lords of the Fallen is kind of approached in a different way, of where you will die twice before it's game over. If your character dies in Axiom, you're taken to Umbral. If you die in Umbral, then you die for real. Even the place that you get transported to, the vestige, has a lot of significance and meaning. The term vestige means a trace of something that is disappearing or no longer exists. You can have the last vestiges of your soul, or you can have the last vestiges of humanity that is in this one location. So it's kind of interesting that the resting point for this game is a vestige. It is a piece of something that is disappearing or no longer exists. And also another thing happens. If you are in Umbral for too long, a Reaper appears. It's kind of trying to, in a way, create an equilibrium across life, of where, like, no, you can't be in here too long existing as a human who is still alive within death. No, you need to have the balances of life equal out. So there's kind of this Reaper character coming over and just being like, nope, you're done, go back. At least that's my interpretation of it anyway. I love, theory crafting whenever it comes to any type of Souls or Souls-like game. I feel it's really interesting, actually, just looking at some of my notes right now. With Elaine, her Umbral self is different from the Axiom version because she lives in both worlds, kind of like Death Stranding, of how you see Sam living with both death and life. And then that fight between good and evil, Lydia and Aureus, it kind of takes on its own life to a degree. It could be so many links to like the Old and New Testament through that, so it's fascinating how many lives this series and these games will take on, and how much lore and how much substance there really is behind them. Because when we talk about the worship of death, the iconography that is utilized to represent death, there are so many ways in which it can be approached. And the way Lords of the Fallen does it in particular, where you can see memories of those who are dead. You can utilize your weapon in a different way. You can utilize the Umbral world in a different way entirely. And it's so fascinating to me. I absolutely love the game Lords of the Fallen. There were some things that I did not like whatsoever. But regardless, Lords of the Fallen does do an incredible job at being a Souls-like, at being something that is incredibly tangible. I don't know if that's necessarily the right word to use, but something that is very concrete in the way it delivers itself, story-wise and lore-wise, because there's a lot that you can go through whenever it comes to the lore of the game, even its predecessor, Lords of the Fallen. I always love discussing the concept of death in video games. I feel like it's fascinating. I know that these types of topics are not really for everyone. There is going to be a trigger warning that is going to be placed at the very beginning of this game. So if you guys, if death is, as a topic, is in your cup of tea within a video game, please, by all means, you guys can watch one of my other videos or dive into something a little more happy. But for me, it's always been fascinating to discuss in a positive way, because within the concept of death, within Lords of the Fallen, you're constantly divided between two states of mind, Axiom and Umbral. The world of the living and the world of the dead have this illustrious kind of pull towards the player of where, I want to know this lore bit, but it's an Umbral. Oh, I want to know about this lore bit, but it's an Axiom. So you have this kind of interesting contrapositive going on. And technically, there are only certain bosses you can beat if you are in Umbral. I believe it was at the very beginning of the game, there was a certain witch that you needed to get past. You had to pull out her Umbral. You had to basically like remove her soul and destroy her soul in order to get it. You can do that with other characters. It's faster to do it when you are in Umbral. That way it decreases what the lifespan of the character is in Axiom. So if you are decreasing what the soul is of the character, you are therefore decreasing their life, which I feel like that in and of itself is so philosophically driven, and it's so, oh my god, it's so fascinating. And I love thinking about these kinds of things so much. Like, think about this, like if you kill the soul, you kill the person. That's actually really fucking heavy. But you guys, that was it for today's discussion video. If you all like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, your hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Ubasa.